Saparivrajachaya Ashtota Rajatashi Srimati Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON with the founder Jaya Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Paramahansa Saparivrajachaya Ashtota Rajatashi Srimati Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Guru Parampara Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shat Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Shri Gopashtami Ki Jai. Samavira Bhaktarinda Ki Jai. Jai Nitya Guru Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories always to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Mataji Krishna Prabhupada Sasambandaya Sahajago Bhagavata Satyari Shira Shakti Krishna. Does everybody understand German? Versteht jeder Deutsch? Oh, vielen Dank. Oder soll ich lieber in Englisch sprechen? Or should I rather speak in English? English is better? Okay. Braucht jemand eine deutsche Übersetzung für das Englische? Maduya Lila kann ja bei der Dara sitzen. Oder? Dara? Übersetzt du so ein bisschen, ne? Gib mir ruhig Zeichen, wenn ich so schnell spreche, dass ich so irgendwie mich zurückhalte oder so. Muss ich irgendwie auch lernen. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Yasantato Jayamudirayet Srimatam Svakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantasto Vyabhadrani Virunuti Saritsatam Nashtapayeshu Havadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloki Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki Om Agyanatimarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Shakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupakadamayam Nadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitantam Sajivam Sabaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakamitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tata Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kann ich bitte diese Bücher tauschen? Würdest du mir die englische Bhagavad Gita dafür geben? Bitte. Die englische. Vielen herzlichen Dank.
Liest du auch Bhagavatam?
Ja, auch in Englisch, aber ich habe meinen Computer hier. Das deutsche Srimad Bhagavatam kannst du ihr geben, wenn du möchtest. Ja, so viel brauche ich wahrscheinlich nicht, nur einen Vers. Ich habe viele andere Sachen. Hauptsächlich das Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. Before we study the Srimad Bhagavatam, We will read a little bit from the Transcendental Diary, Travels with His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, October 1976 to November 1976, by Harishauri Prabhu. So Srila Prabhupada is still in Sri Vrindavan, and I think it's the 22nd of November. Yeah. During the morning, Srila Prabhupada summoned me with his buzzer. When I went into his room, he was looking distinctly annoyed. "What is this noise?" he asked me. Cocking my ear, I picked up the distinct tones of a flute. Someone was playing one, or rather attempting to, in one of the guest house rooms. There was no particular tune, only a rambling dissonance following no meter or harmony. "It's someone in the guest house practicing on the flute," I observed. Srila Prabhupada was not impressed with their efforts. "Stop this speculation," he said. "Find out who it is and tell them to stop." I was able to locate the source of the sound, a visiting devotee, and request them to stop. The devotee was not too happy, but complied because he did not want to disturb Srila Prabhupada. The first Bengali issue of Back to God had arrived, and Prabhupada was pleased to see it. He has been meeting almost every afternoon with a Bengali man who is staying in our guest house, and encouraging him to translate his books. Prem Yogi continues to come each morning and read to Srila Prabhupada his latest Hindi translation efforts. Whatever he translates, he speaks for the public every afternoon under the tamal tree during the darshan in the temple courtyard. Prabhupada is very pleased that such an educated man is coming to stay with us and is giving him a great deal of his time and encouragement. Okay, something stick out to you? To your kind of attention? So today is rather short, but we have a lot to discuss and read. So here we can see that Srila Prabhupada is not very impressed with the efforts of somebody who's trying to play the flute, but who's obviously just speculating because it was just such a maybe uncomposed, unordered way how to train to exercise the flute. I myself learned playing the flute when I was in the kindergarten, and first of all you learn how to meet the notes properly, and you try the different what is it called, octaves and everything, and then just some combinations, and basically as far as I understand it's the same everywhere. Even when I some time ago also tried to learn the guitar or the harmonium, first of all you learn the dissonance and sonance and so many different things around it, you learn some theory also about the rhythm and so many things. It's not just that, okay, you feel like it and then you just do something, My Guru Maharaj was also sometimes chastising me when I was speculating, when I was cooking something in the kitchen. Once he had a guest and I was making some kind of sweet khichdi and he didn't like it at all. Put some nuts or something inside. And he also said, I should learn to cook from the cooking book. So we can see a similar lesson here. On the other hand, we see the opposite result of when the Guru is pleased. By following the proper procedure, Srila Prabhupada apparently has a Hindu, an Indian Prabhu, Prem Yogi, who is translating in Hindi Srila Prabhupada's books. And Srila Prabhupada is so pleased with him that not only is he allowed to stay in the guest house and is being daily encouraged by Srila Prabhupada, but Srila Prabhupada actually is spending lots of time with him under the tamal tree. Spending a lot of time with him, and under the tamal tree during the darshans in the temple courtyard in the afternoon, Srila Prabhupada is also discussing the same materials. So that is also very much related to today's class. Therefore, I will go immediately to Srimad Bhagavatam. So today we read from the 5th Canto Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 13, text 23. What is the title of the chapter? Kannst du mal kurz gucken? Ich glaube Maharaj Rahugana's talks with Jada Bharat. So this is actually the way how we can attain the mercy of a devotee. No? If we submit to him, if we understand our ignorance, our helpless position, and then we try to change it by adapting our mindset, basically, and our intelligence. And we can see that example also in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Then first of all, we see Krishna and Arjuna, and they are acting like friends. They're discussing matters, why to fight, why not to fight. And first of all, Arjuna considers Krishna to be his equal, his friend, because they have this kind of loving, devotional rasa. They are related in friendship. And then finally, Arjuna understands that by his argumentative mentality, he is not reaching anywhere. He's not coming to some conclusion. And then he surrenders to Krishna. Shishyastehang shadimang tvam prapannam, in the chapter 2, text 17. And this is a very interesting point to discuss, I think, which today's class is also related to. And we will see how the things evolve. First of all, I would like to ask if I have permission to read 3 verses, not only 1, if this is possible. Or just maybe read the connection in the Sanskrit and not the purports, and also read some previous verses to set proper context for that, like a frame. Would that be okay? Maybe I don't need to read the purports or something, but at least then 2 more translations. And then we are almost in the end of the chapter. Okay, so let's chant together. Namo Mahatbhyostu Namah Shishubhyo. Namo Yuvabhyo Namah Avatubhyam. Ye Brahmanagang Avaduta Lingash. Charanti Tibya Shivamasturagyam. Namo Mahatbhyostu Namah Shishubhyo. Namo Yuvabhyo Namah Avatubhyah. Ye Brahmanagam Avaduta Lingash. Charanti Tebhya Shivamasturagyam. Abus?
Namo Mahatbhyostu Namah Shishubhyo.
Namo Mahatbhyostu Namah Shishubhyo.
Namo Yuvabhyo Namah Avatubhyah.
Namo Yuvabhyo Namah Avatubhyah.
Brahmanagam Avaduta Lingash.
Charanti Tebhya Shivamasturagyam.
Namo Mahatbhyostu Namah Shishubhyo.
Namo Mahatbhyostu Namah Shishubhyo.
Namo Yuvabhyo Namah Avatubhyah.
Namo Yuvabhyo Namah Avatubhyah.
Brahmanagam Avaduta Lingash.
Ye Brahmanagam Avaduta Lingash.
Charanti Tebhya Shivam Asuraryam.
Charanti Tebhya Shivamasturagyam. Mataji?
Namo Mahatbhyostu Namah Shishubhyo.
Namo Mahatbhyostu Namah Shishubhyo.
Namo Yuvabhyo Namah Avatubhyam.
Namo Yuvabhyo Namah Avatubhyam.
Ye Brahmanagam
Ye Brahmanagam Avaduta Lingash. Charanti Tebhya Shivamasturagyam. Charanti Devya Shivamasturayam. Namaha. All obeisances. Mahatbhyaha. Unto the great personalities. Astu. Let there be. Namaha. My obeisances. Shishubhyaha. Unto those great personalities. Who appear as boys. Namaha. Respectful obeisances. Yuvabhyaha. Unto those who appear as young men. Namaha. Respectful obeisances. Avatubhyaha. Unto those who appear as children. Ye. All those who. Brahmanaha. Self-realized and transcendental knowledge. Gam. The earth. Avadhuta lingaha. Who remain hidden under different bodily guises. Charanti. They traverse. Tebhyaha. From them. Shivam astu. Let there be all good fortune. Ragyam. Unto the royal dynasties or kings who are always very puffed up. Always very puffed up. Yeah. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the great personalities, whether they walk on the earth's surface as children, young boys, avadutas, or great brahmanas. Even if they are hidden under different guises, I offer my respects to all of them. By their mercy, may there be good fortune in the royal dynasties that are always offending them. Purport. King Rahugana was very repentant because he had forced Jadabharata to carry his palanquin. He therefore began offering prayers to all kinds of brahmanas and self-realized persons, even though they might be playing like children or hiding in some guises. The four Kumaras walked everywhere in the guise of 5-year-old boys, and similarly there are many brahmanas, knowers of Brahman, who traverse the globe either as young men, children, or avadutas. Being puffed up due to their position, the royal dynasties generally offend these great personalities. Therefore, King Rahugana began to offer his respectful obeisances unto them, so that the offensive royal dynasties might not glide down into a hellish condition. If one offends a great personality, the supreme personality of Godhead does not excuse one, although the great personalities themselves might not take offense. Maharaj Ambarisha was offended by Durvasa, who even approached Lord Vishnu for pardon. Lord Vishnu would not grant him pardon. Therefore, he had to fall down at the lotus feet of Maharaj Ambarisha, even though Maharaj Ambarisha was a Kshatriya Grihastha. One should be very careful not to offend the lotus feet of Vaishnavas and Brahmanas. So I will read again the verse and the translation. Namo Mahatbhyo stu Namah Shishubhyo Namo Yuvabhyo Nama Avatubhyaha Ye Brahmanagam Avaduta Lingash Charanti Tebhya Shivamasturagyam. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the great personalities, whether they walk on the earth's surface as children, young boys, avadutas, or great brahmanas. Even if they are hidden under different guises, I offer my respects to all of them. By their mercy may there be good fortune in the royal dynasties that are always offending them. So first, to summarize the points of this verse. Here we can see how Maharaj Rahugana internally feels repentant because he had mistreated Jada Bharat and even dared to threaten him with punishment. Identifying himself with being a great king, having the right to punish people, to teach them. But then, kindly, Jada Bharata, being a great self-realized soul, even being disguised as a dumb and stupid person, dirty, filthy to look at and everything. So he, out of his kindness mercy, chose to reveal himself to the king, and he offered to this threat that the king spoke to him when he was really angry and upset and wanted to punish him. He offered him well-wishing words, kindness, mercy. And so here, the king suddenly realizes, after so many instructions and goodwill of the Brahmana in disguise, Jada Bharata, he realizes that the royal dynasties are generally offending such great Brahmanas. And we can see that also in our daily life, not only in the Vedic culture, even in temple managements, that sometimes the administrators of the temple, they don't want to even listen to the words of Brahmanas. In the Vedic culture, it should be that the Brahmanas are on top of all state affairs. They are not directly managing, although they may choose to. They have the ability and the rights to do. But they have a higher subject matter to take care of, and that is religious principles. Kshatriyas, they're taking care of the people. They protect people, their citizens. And Vaishyas, they protect the cows, and they maintain the society largely. They give a lot of donations. And the Shudras are there with their working skills to support all the three higher castes. That is how, in a Vedic culture, everything works peacefully together. And there's even a nice analogy like a body. A body has a head, 2 hands, has a torso with a belly, and also has legs. And it's not that we can miss any of those parts. We need the head, we need the 2 arms, we need the 2 legs, and we need also the belly, which has a very important role also to nourish the entire body, and in this way to create energy so that everything can go on for the metabolism. But comparatively spoken, the Brahmanas being the top of the society, the Kshatriyas being the arms, the Vaishyas being the belly or the torso, so to say, and the Shudras being the legs, there appears to be relative importance and non-importance. Like if we lose 1 leg, for example, in a war or something can happen, or we have an accident, then we can still continue to live. Without the head, it's a little bit more challenging to survive. And also we can see practically, if people have their stomachs reduced, it's also becoming not a very nice life for them. They can somehow, drag on and everything by artificial means nowadays. But in natural way, it would not function. So the king here, being reflective of his own misbehavior in the initial meeting with Jada Bharata, not having realized his real identity because he was more concerned with the external appearance rather than the internal qualification, he, on behalf of all the Kshatriyas, Kshatriya class, is asking for blessings actually. He's begging for the mercy. He says, may there be good fortune. And to whom? To all the royal dynasties that are generally, or here said, always offending them. So he is appealing, by his own repentance, he's appealing to the general populace, so to say, to general caste in which he finds himself. He's a Kshatriya, and so, he is very kindly feeling compassion. And he's taking shelter of the devotee. So this is what is going on here in this verse. And for me, this is very a good starting point to speak about the Vedic culture. Because being puffed up by our own positions, sometimes we also have maybe some beauty or some other material assets like good birth and everything, or good family relations, and we feel pretty satisfied in life. So we may feel puffed up, like we are self-complacent. No? Yeah. And due to that, we might misregard or disregard the brahmanas. The brahmanas are very dear to Lord Krishna because they are not interested in accumulating wealth or prestige or something. They are satisfied living in a straw hut and teaching and protecting religious principles. And this we can see also in the body of, what is his name? Chanakya Pandit. He was not even walking inside the palace. Whenever he was giving his advice to the king had to come and visit him in his straw hut. Because he knew about the dangers of material association, of wealth, women, prestige, all these kind of things that can very much bewilder the consciousness of us. And then we start to misidentify with that which we are not, which in Sanskrit is called Maya, which is the material body, mind, intelligence, and so many things. And here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, he gives a special attention that we should be very, very careful not to offend the lotus feet of Vaishnavas and Brahmanas. And this is particularly important in the Vaishnava community. Especially for us, because we have been raised in different cultures, maybe now in this global age, all around the globe, and we may have different types of etiquette, different habits, different perceptions, and we may not be so consciously aware of all this programming that took place, right, in our subconscious mind, and also from the particular ideas and desires which we carry on life after life, maybe from other lives too, over into this body. So in the Vedic high culture, it is therefore very important to follow the proper behavior, to learn not to ask for what is my right, what am I, what can I enjoy, as the materialistic misculture is mostly focusing on, but there the focus is different. The focus is more on what can I do, what do I need to do, what is my duty. And generally we associate duty with something unpleasant, like we have to go to work, for example, right? Or we need to go to school. All these things, they are not apparently full of pleasure, right? But since we are interested in getting the results of that, a good education, maybe later due to that a good position, or accumulate riches and to get a wife or whatever, to be attractive to some in some way or other, then by higher intelligence, by using our higher intelligence, we can understand, okay, we need to undergo some kind of tapasya to get to the real thing. And in Sanskrit there's two words, prayas and shreyas, which denote two different types of happiness. Prayas refers to happiness which comes about by bringing the objects of the senses in touch with the senses. And all of us, we have experienced, whether it be eating something pleasurable or, engaging other senses in the quest of seeking sense pleasures. This is always temporarily and usually is also connected with misery. Isn't it? For example, if you take sex life apparently is the epitome of material happiness. And but the problem of that is, how long can one engage in this activity? At some point the body will be tired and this has some end, natural end. And the consequences of this is one has to take care of kids for the rest of their life. Congratulations. for the few moments, maybe 3 minutes, or I don't know how long, maybe sometimes a little longer or a little shorter, depending on the situation and everything. But for such a small amount of prayas, of sense gratification, pleasure, there's such a huge headache following afterwards, so many difficulties. And every person who has children knows the responsibility and the difficulty of attachment that one develops for them on a bodily identification platform and everything, right? There's a lot of misery involved in that. Or if we speak of eating something nice, how much ice cream can we eat? When I was young, I liked to eat in the ice cream shop. I like to eat these cups with fruits, Fruchtbecher. And I used to eat 2 of them. But at one point, I would get such a cold feeling here, I don't know, close to the brain, because I was very greedy for eating this nice ice cream with, syrup and with fruits and with cream and everything. And then I would, give up. It was too painful. What to speak of the belly, At some point one can get stomachache or something, isn't it? So there definitely is some pleasure. It's not that we negate pleasure in material life, but the consequences of the pleasure, that are the real thing. And the intelligent person can have this view to understand what are the reactions, or at least is opening his discrimination to accept, oh, okay, maybe previously I did not think about committing karmic activities, but now I will have to reap the results of that. And so the results of offending a Vaishnava, Srila Prabhupada is here relating to a story of Maharaj Ambarish. This story can be found in Srimad Bhagavatam. Maharaj Ambarisha was a great devotee of the Lord who offered all his senses in the service of the Lord. Because by offering the senses in the Lord of the senses, Rishikesha Sevanam, I don't know, Bhakti Uchati or something. By offering the senses in the service of the Lord of the senses, this is the way how we can really become elevated and happy, internally satisfied. We can have a lasting and healthy life because we follow the proper order. So Maharaj Ambarisha, he was embodying a very high, elevated, kingly position, but as a devotee. And at one point it happened that Durvasa Muni, he was feared in the Vedic stories. Whenever you hear of him, he was a rishi who attained self-realization, but he was very quick to his anger, so he was very much feared. And even in Mahabharata there is some sequence where Duryodhana purposefully sends Durvasa Muni with his many followers to visit Draupadi and the Pandavas while they are living in exile. And he had thousands of disciples. How can one maintain or host, thousands of people if you live in the forest from a few, leaves and roots and something, you're hiding, right? So his intention was to destroy them by the wrath of Durvasa Muni, that he would not be pleased if he and his disciples would not be satisfied. So therefore he sent them to the Pandavas. He was always trying to create some obstacles for them, to bring them to fall down. But, of course, the Pandavas' ally is Krishna. And so Krishna devised the means that when Draupadi, she learned of that, and she was like, what should I do? Already the Pandavas had eaten, and she had a special pot or something, some pot in which when she was cooking, there would come more and more of this preparation until she herself ate. And that already had happened because they just had taken their, prasadam, and there was only a tiny little remnant of vegetables somewhere to the side of the pot or something, And Durvasa Muni was about to approach, and she was like almost freaking out, what should I do? So then she took shelter of Lord Krishna, and she prayed to Krishna, and he appeared there, and he told her, okay, you see there's something, some carrot or something, give it to me, And then he ate these tiny little vegetables sticking to the side of the pot. And by eating that, he felt such a huge pleasure and satisfaction that all Durvasa Muni and all his thousands of disciples could not eat a tiny amount anymore. Because he's the source of everything, right? Like when we have a tree, the tree has roots. So if we nourish the roots, automatically all the different limbs of the trees, the branches, the stem, the twigs, the leaves, the fruits, the flowers, everything is being satisfied. So then, actually Draupadi had sent Durvasa Muni and his disciples to take a bath in the river. She had welcomed them very nicely. Oh, welcome, and please, if you want to take prasadam, please take your bath first, follow your Brahminical duties, and then you come back and I will prepare everything. So then, in the meantime, that has happened, that Krishna, he was eating this piece of vegetable, and he was feeling such a great pleasure that Durvasa Muni and all his thousands of disciples, they felt very much embarrassed. We cannot eat anything anymore, how can we go back? And now she may have prepared so many nice things and we cannot offend them, So they were very much concerned also about following their part of the proper etiquette, following their duties. And so they did not come back again, didn't show up again. So in this way, Lord Krishna saved them. And in a similar way, Durvasa Muni also, he came there to Maharaj Ambarish. And the setting was that Maharaj Ambarish, he had just been fasting for Ekadashi for, I think, 1 year or something, for a long period of time, following a specific vrata to control the senses. And so then, it so happened that it was just the time that comes after Ekadashi comes Dvadashi, the time to break the fast. And it has to be breaking in a particular time, astrological time, in order to be fruitful or something, to yield the benefits of the tapasya. And so in this time Durvasa Muni came. And then he wanted to, Maharaj Ambarish was just about to eat, basically, so he couldn't because this great sage again came. And but the time ran short, Durvasa Muni, he decided, okay, I want to first take my bath again in the river, after having been welcomed. So he took his bath in the river, and he did not return, and for a long time. And the king was already, the time was running out shortly, so he asked his ministers, the brahmanas, what am I to do in this situation, So he had to break the fast, but in a Vedic culture, it is a great offense if you eat before the guest. First of all, you serve as a host, you serve your guest, and then in the end, the host eats, right? So this is the proper culture, Vedic culture. Okay, so what to do? And then the brahmanas, they advised him, look, if you take a little water, and I think, or maybe even Chanamrita, it is at the same time breaking the fast and not breaking the fast. It depends, of course, on which type of fasting one has performed. For example, if one has fasted completely, also from water, Nirjala Ekadashi from water, then if you just take a little bit of water, that is already breaking the fast. If you have just fasted from eating grains or something, then apparently you need to eat grains or something to break the fast. So anyway, they decided, okay, this taking in some water is at the same time keeping the vow that he had, and then at the same time breaking Ekadashi in a proper way. So here we can see that the great devotee king, he was following under the guidance of the brahmanas. He was not considering, I am the king, I know everything, I can do what I like. No, he followed religious principles under the guidance of the brahmanas. But Durvasa Muni, being a rishi, a seer, he could understand that the king had broken his fast, even though he was taking a bath. And he came back and he was furious, And he plucked out some hair and threw it on the floor and created some demon with the intention to kill him, Because he was like angry, Some people, they are jähzornig. I do not know how you call that in English, but they are quick, to their anger. Jähzornig. So he pulled out some hair and threw it on the floor and created a big demon with red hair and huge, and told him, okay, kill him. He is not worthy of being a king. He is no real business, And what happened is that then Maharaj Ambarisha, he was just, whatever, my dear Lord Krishna, if this is my fate, what can I do? He was also surrendered. It's a very nice personal weapon. Do you know which weapon I refer to? Maybe someone of you knows. Yeah, Sudarshan Chakra. And he sent his Sudarshan Chakra, which is also a Vaishnava personality. And he sent him. And this Sudarshan Chakra, first of all, was destroying this demon, and then later also was running behind Durvasa Muni. And Durvasa Muni, he ran everywhere. He was trying to hide in the water, in the mountain peaks, beyond the planet, in the nether regions of the existence, different hellish planets, in the heavenly planets. He even went to take shelter of Lord Shiva in Kailas, and to Lord Brahma, and to Lord Narayan. And even when he came to Lord Vishnu, Lord Narayan, and he was seeking shelter, and then Lord Vishnu, he could not pardon him. He said, my devotee is higher than me. You have to fall down at his lotus feet, you offended my devotee. If you offend me, no problem, I can. But if you offend my devotee, then Lord Krishna is not forgiving that. So that was the scene with Maharaj Ambarisha. And that all, running around the universe, took another year, basically, So again, the king was fasting another year. King Ambarisha, what could he do? He cannot eat also, so, what can he do? And then finally, Maharaj Ambarisha came back to him, fell at his lotus feet, and asked him for forgiveness, And of course, he did not take offense. He did not consider, I'm such a great devotee king, but he thought, oh my God, no. Maybe Sudarshan Chakra is chasing Durvasa Muni, and So he was maybe feeling even for Durvasa Muni, right? Like a Vaishnava is doing. So we should be very careful not to offend the lotus feet of Vaishnavas and Brahmanas, because Lord Krishna is not going to excuse that. And why does that happen? Why can we come into this mentality of offending another person? If we are too much concerned with I and mine and puffed up due to some identification, right? So the problem is also that, and here I will rephrase the different verses starting from 19 to text number 25. I will just speak a little bit of the contents, not the verses, but to continue the cultural frame. So it is very dangerous to maintain material attachments. First of all, when we hear of the 10 offenses in the morning, the 10th offense is to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this subject matter, and to maintain material attachments, because why? Material attachments are such that they are keeping one under the spell of illusion in this material existence, life after life. And if we chant inattentively because we feel something, or the mind is thinking somewhere, wandering, and it's just concerned with I and mine, of course we cannot reach the goal of being completely absorbed in Krishna, because the mind is busy elsewhere, right? And our attachments keep us here. And then, how can we give up the attraction to the sense objects and come away from this prayas? So the next step, the other pleasure, the higher pleasure, which may be a little delayed in yielding its fruits, like when we have a student that is studying PhD or whatever, he understands, okay, I must undergo this amount of tapasya to gain that whatever, title, position, or activity, maybe. And so how to do that, how we can come there to give up the attraction for the sense objects, is by sharpening the sword of knowledge by devotional service. Of course, it also entails hearing and chanting, remembering, and by that we will be able to cut the hard knot of illusory energy, of Maya, and cross to the other side of the ocean of nescience, or avidya. And this nescience is our bodily identification. And in the text 21 here, King Ahugana is also mentioning that the birth as a human being is the best birth of all. Even if there are higher planets, heavenly planets, Lord Brahma, the creator, the engineer of the universe, so to say, and various demigods and sages, how come we here on planet Earth, being embodied in the human form of life, we can be considered by King Rahugana to have a more elevated birth, more glorious birth? Isn't that strange? So, the solution to this is that what is the use of the exalted position of a demigod? In the heavenly planets, due to profuse material comforts, there is no possibility of associating with devotees. Like I give that example of Chanakya Pandit. The king had to come to him in his hut, straw hut. He would not go in the palace. And likewise, Lord Chaitanya also, there was also a very nice time when the king of Jagannath Puri, what was his name? I forgot his name. When Lord Chaitanya was present. Yeah, Maharaj Prataparuda. He became a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya, and he was hankering for the association of Lord Chaitanya, but he couldn't get it until who was that? One associate of Lord Chaitanya. They made some arrangements that during the Ratha Yatra, when the Lord rests in the garden, then you can come and massage his lotus feet or something. He can do some service. And so by the association of, and by the mercy of the devotee, he could get the mercy of the Lord, so to say. And in this way, only he was able, by the association of the devotees, to gain the favor of God, to get, to achieve Shreyas, the supreme goal of life. And the supreme goal of life is to become fully self-realized. And not only to become liberated, like the Buddhists have this term nirvana, to get out of this entanglement here in the material world. So the goal is not only that, it's far beyond that. It's actually to be reinstated in our original, pure Satchidananda position. Sat means eternal, Chit means full of consciousness, of knowledge, and Ananda, full of bliss, eternally. So who wouldn't want that? And this is really the benefit of the human birth on this planet Earth. Because here, on planet Earth, there is a mixture of happiness and distress. And because the distress is there, we can also become a little bit more detached, right, from enjoying the fruits of our activities. So therefore, King Rahugana in text 21 is saying that therefore this human birth is even higher than the demigod's birth, because of the possibility of associating with devotees. And so the association of the devotees is threatened by, or our taking of association of devotees is threatened when we come under false prestige, we lack discrimination, we start to argument and everything because of identifying with these material bodies, which we are not. And it's only by the mercy of the devotee that one can be free from all these problems. Therefore, here in this verse today, we can see that Maharaj Rahugana refers to that. In the previous verses, he has also glorified the association of pure devotees, and that we need to bathe in the dust of their lotus feet. That means really smearing us with the instructions and like carrying on them on our head, like they are our crown or something, they are our only thing, our purpose in life. Only by doing that, we can finally attain the mercy of Shri Krishna. And then in the next two verses, I will just read them. There's another nice thing that I wanted to say. Srila Shukadev Goswami continued, "My dear king, O son of Mother Uttara, there were some waves of dissatisfaction in the mind of Jada Bharat due to his being insulted by King Rahugana, who made him carry his palanquin. But Jada Bharat neglected this, and his heart again became calm and quiet like an ocean. Although King Rahugana had insulted him, he was a great Paramahansa. Being a Vaishnava, he was naturally very kind-hearted, and he therefore told the king about the constitutional position of the soul. He then forgot the insult because King Rahugana pitifully begged pardon Krishna was happening here. At his lotus feet. And then he began to wander all over the world, all over the earth, just as before. After receiving lessons from the great devotee Jadabhat, King Rahugana of the state of Savira became completely aware of the constitutional position of the soul. He thus gave up the bodily conception completely. My dear king, whoever takes shelter of the servant of the Lord is certainly glorified, because he can without difficulty give up the bodily conception. So here in these two verses we see two nice things. One is that even though the pure devotee, Jadabharata, felt some ways of dissatisfaction in his mind when he felt offended, apparently the mind became disturbed, but he disregarded it, he did not pay attention to that. And then after some time, inside it became peaceful again and he was, not disturbed anymore. So this is how we can learn to tolerate if our position, our prestige, or whatever attachment we have is threatened, right? Or is being questioned or taken away. No? So we can apply that same principle. We can just, notice there's some disturbance and just tolerate it and understand, anyway, I am not this body, this thing does not belong to me, and I'm just a servant of Krishna. By the sort of Shastric intelligence, scriptural intelligence, and by practicing devotional service, both need to be together. Like you need to sharpen the sword all the time. Like normally they had a stone or something, or some steel, I don't know. So in this way, he is able to have the proper discrimination. And then the second verse that I said here, text 25, we can see the results of what happened to the king. King Rahugana, he was very hard to understand, and several times, again and again, he asked already Jadabharata, can you please explain more about it? I'm too dull-headed, I don't get it inside. And even the next chapter is still continuing like that. Basically, Jadabharata is just elaborating on the same things, a little bit more deeply, and expanding this knowledge. And then what is the result? The result is that this king became completely aware of the constitutional position of the soul. He thus gave up the bodily conception completely. And that we can do only by taking shelter of the servant of the Lord. So other questions or comments to this?
I have a question. How can we be a little bit more like a great devotee like Ambarish Maharaj? That he said, I don't even take offense, and how can we be a little bit more like this?
Can you specify it and personalize it? How can you improve? When you say a little, it means you want to have some progress, right? But it's very different for different people. Can you give me some examples that is relevant for you?
Yeah, when we maybe have some conflicts or something, then we very fast we are like, wow, this is very big offense and something. But how can we be a little bit more calm, like Ambarish Maharaj?
What is your experience in devotional service? What is the one means that can solve all fire of material existence?
Not my experience.
No, in general, but what is your personal experience? Because you are putting the question now. I want you to have a personal benefit. Yeah. What is helping you if you feel that,
I don't know.
We chant Hare Krishna. That is extinguishing the fire, the forest fire of material existence. Isn't it? You need to somehow remember. And therefore we should chant 24 hours a day. And who can chant 24 hours a day? Trinadapi sunichena, tarodapi saishnuna, amanina manadena kitanya sadari, One should consider himself lower than the straw in the street, more tolerant than a tree, and without any sense of false prestige, and one should be ready to offer all respect to others. So how we can develop these qualities is just by practicing devotional service. And by being grateful for the association of any other devotee. You know. Sometimes we may have the material conception that, oh, this person is not as elevated as me, he's just a bhakta, you know, or he has this defect, or she, you know, she's always arguing, or whatever, you know. But these are all material conceptions, and one should not see a Vaishnava in terms of his birth and material qualifications. This is actually an offense. And why it is an offense? Very practical, because I think I'm important. My false ego is being disturbed, and it wants to be the controller and the enjoyer, isn't it? That's if you look at that, if you kind of take it apart, you know, defragment it. What is it? Like a puzzle. If you take away the pieces of the puzzle, so we can also disassemble the pieces of the false ego by spiritual intelligence, by devotee association, by chanting Hare Krishna, by taking shelter in prasadam if we have no other means, you know. Or maybe sometimes if the tamagun is too strong, maybe I need to go and rest. I had that when I was joining here in this temple. Sometimes it was intolerable for me to stay and chant japa with the devotees, you know. Some people would just run back and forth in front of you, and then even I put some cushions there, and I was either walking on top of the cushions or putting the cushion away. It's like, come on, there's some space. You know, my mind and false ego. And if it became too unbearable, maybe it was not so exalted, but that helped me. Either I took a small nap, or I took some prasadam, and then my mind was again peaceful and could continue to concentrate on the chanting. So we need to learn how to deal with the mind also properly. What is the mind? How it is exactly intimidating us, and how it is making obstacles in our lives, the false ego in the mind. And there are many, many nice things in order to do that. There's Vaishnava etiquette, which one can learn. Srila Sanatana Goswami composed a very nice book on that, Hari Bhakti Vilas. And there's so many lectures on Vaishnava etiquette. So when we follow the proper etiquette, like Maharaj Ambarisha and Draupadi, and all these examples that I mentioned, and here Maharaj Rahugana, and we accept, okay, somebody else is always higher than me. What do I know anyway? I know that I know nothing. I know that I'm full of, I'm an ocean of bad qualities and whatever, you know. Everyone knows himself, right? We can always find something superior in another person. And this is something that they taught me in the Bhakta program, you know. If you find fault in a person, then for each fault you find 10 good things the person does, you know. Okay, he's getting up for Mangal Arati, taking prasadam, you know, maybe he's doing nice puja or whatever, you know. Even though I may not like the person, but in this way we can defeat, you know, with the intelligence, the mind. Because the intelligence is above the mind, and above the intelligence is the soul, proper. So when we start to step aside, you know, stepping out of this role of false ego, stepping into the new position of being the soul. I am the servant of the servant of the servant. I'm also the servant of this offender, you know, who offended me, right? And this person has so many good qualities, and I remember my own bad qualities, then it's much more easy to become humble. And then we can chant. But we need to become humble and tolerant. And practice, of course, devotional service. As the Guru Sahib said. Was that the answer okay?
Yes.
A little bit elaborate again. But I hope practical. So, other questions or comments?
Thank you for the wonderful lecture again. And my question is it actually offensive to break Ekadashi on the wrong time, like not in the specified room where you can break it? Or is it just your personal choice?
Prabhuji, you know something more about Ekadashi? I just know the basics, but since you're from the Indian context, maybe you have some more.
No, I don't know about the offense, but the time period which they have mentioned, if you do that one, that it proper way how to you are going to do it. Otherwise, the result what you are getting or something, the result will change, but not an offense.
The result will be spoiled.
But I am not quite 100%. You can ask some higher authorities.
But actually, it's a very nice thing that maybe it's really not applying because this is a process. Offense is when somebody feels offended, right? And if this is a process of, for example, keeping Ekadashi, but we can see that in the Vedic tradition, there are so elaborate sacrifices, no? And it is even been said that in this age of Kali Yuga, one should only chant Hare Krishna. That is the only authorized sacrifice. No? Why? Because nowadays people are not qualified. They don't have the real Brahminical qualities to perform the yagyas, and even it is said that one should not take sannyas in this age, and many different things. But of course, there's a higher principle. If we can use it in the Lord's service, that is higher apparently than karmic considerations, because that's beyond. So, by not following the proper procedure, one does not get the proper results. Yeah, that's a good answer, actually.
Just a small comment that basically you mentioned that beautiful body, money, or something. Janma Ishwarya Shruta Shrima, like taking a birth in very higher family, having lot of money, lot of knowledge and beauty. These people, for them it is very difficult to approach the Lord. Like Mother Kunti tells that one. And one more thing is, out of millions who have these qualities, only 1 or 2% can be very humble, even though they have all these things. Otherwise, for example, if a person living in a poor condition of life, once he gets millions or billions of, immediately his way of thinking, way of looking at the people, everything will change. Because these poor, like money and all these things, it has so much power that these things can make any person like a dumb man change completely his mentality. So it's so difficult that, as you mentioned, carry palace, try to stay outside of the palace, and just when king comes to him, just give suggestion and let them.
Thank you, such a nice contribution. Beautiful.
But one more thing, Mataji, as you mentioned, we are into Morris Prabhu. So chanting, you should be think about the etiquettes also. At particular point of time, or like I observed for myself, reading many things, like reading the scriptures, chanting the rounds, always, but at one point there is a limitation. When it crosses over, then you will burst out immediately. After that, you will realize why I have done this one. That is also very, for me, it's problematic. That even though knowing all the things, at particular point, going to burst out. After that, regretting why I did that. You don't know how to be humble or something.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, there's special triggers. Everyone has his own red buttons. So that's true, because what happens within the brain is when these triggers get activated, we get pushed these red buttons, and then the intellectual thinking capability is kind of stopped, and we just react emotionally, and that means the gunas are acting. It's not me, the soul, acting. It's just the setup of this body reacting, to the circumstances. And then that's a good observation, because for me also it's a big obstacle sometimes, in a particular thing which I did not succeed to overcome since decades already, in devotional service. But therefore we need the association of compassionate devotees around us, that can tolerate us and that are very well-wishing and correcting, and then, what can we do? Everyone has his own faults, and therefore we need each other, and we need to be well-wishers to each other. Without that well-wishing, we cannot remain. And people are leaving the movement, out of their own decisions of being kicked out by others because of these anatas, because of certain attachments, certain triggers that are there that seem to be hard to overcome, right? So how can we do that? Last time when I experienced such a situation, I had a witness, Kayani Mataji, she was there with me. Very interesting, and she gave me interesting feedback, So I would agree to what you're saying. It's not easy to overcome that conditioning. Because it's under the Lord's control. But then she said something very interesting. How to practically do that and take shelter of Krishna. How would my Guru Maharaj, for example, react in that situation? How would he want me to react, to behave? Just to, anyway, somehow or other get this stop, make it like an emergency brake, like, okay, there's this trigger, my emotions are through the roof, and then just be still, Like Jada Bharata, he experienced these waves of dissatisfaction in his mind, and he neglected them. Maybe that's the trick, to neglect that disturbance, not to identify with it, and then it ebbs away gradually. And then we can start think again with the brain, and not just react. But that's training. And therefore it is said devotional service can be attained in a fraction of a moment, or not even after thousands of lifetimes, because it's so hard to work on the false ego. But that's the real thing that we're doing. Besides learning how to serve Krishna and what is happening in the spiritual realm and all these things. Thank you. Very nice comments. Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, that's it, or something more? Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Kuti Vaishnava ki jai. Jai Nitya Guru. Actually, I forgot to tell you about Gopashtami. Gopashtami is the first day when Krishna, before he was yielding, he was going out in the fields with the calves, and then Gopashtami marks